Hey friends, welcome to PowerCoat Music. In this presentation, we'll do a complete overview of the Behringer LM Drum hybrid sampling drum machine. Behringer claims to have authentically recreated the sounds from the legendary LM1 and LM2 drum machines that were used by such artists as Michael Jackson, Prince, Phil Collins, Herbie Hancock, Run DMC, Tears for Fears, and many more on some of their greatest hits of the 80s. Before we continue, I want to quickly ask you to please check out my YouTube homepage to view all of my videos that are carefully organized by subject. Also, if you find this information useful, please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a great deal and helps us to keep doing what we're doing. And now, back to the presentation. In this presentation, I'm going to cover the Behringer LM Drum's features, technical specifications, top panel controls, and back panel. At the time of this presentation, the Behringer LM Drum retails for $399. Now this is a very interesting drum machine, so grab your coffee and your tea and stay with me to the end. If you like drum machines, or if you're the least bit curious, you won't want to miss this one. Let's start with the Behringer LM Drum's features. The unit boasts an 8 by 12-bit sampling sound engine. It has 109 authentic drum sounds, including LM1, LM2, LM9000, and more iconic 80s drum sounds. The line input allows for live recording and storage of your own samples, and the unit has analog circuitry including the original 3320 VCF and 2164 VCAs for incredible warmth. It includes 16 digital to analog converters, DACs, with a variable sample rate and authentic 8 to 12-bit resolution. It has 16 voice architecture with independent level and pan controls for each voice. The unit also has a 64-step drum sequencer that supports polymeter, step repeat, note repeat, real time, triggering, and track mute and track solo. There are 16 independent analog outputs for external processing or recording. It has an integrated effects bus feature with wave designer and dual mode analog filter with per voice assignment. The unit has 16 velocity sensitive drum pads. Moving on, it has live recording, editing, and playback of analog filter cutoff via automation. It also has storage of up to 8 songs and 128 patterns, all of which can be imported or exported during playback for unlimited songs and patterns. The pattern mode allows arrangements of patterns into full songs and setting the number of repeats per song part. The song mode allows for chaining songs together for live sets and expanded compositions. The unit has a unique auto scroll feature that enables improvisation in all modes. It also includes MIDI in, out, through, plus USB implementation for synchronization and connection to external devices. The sync options include USB, MIDI, clock, and internal for maximum versatility. And the unit has an encoder for editing parameters such as tempo, swing, probability, flam, and random. There's a 128 by 64 LCD display, and the unit has a headphone and main outputs with 1/4-inch connectors. We'll move on to the Behringer LM Drum's technical specifications. On your screen now, we'll have those specifications, and they're in a chart, a 2-column chart. On the left column, we have the specification, and on the right column, we'll have the specification description. So we're going to start row by row with the architecture section. In the architecture section, we have the number of voices, which are 16, and the type is going to be sampling. The following is the connectivity section, and in this section we have our power switch, our MIDI in, through, and out 5-pin DIN ports. We also have a USB port, a sync in and out port, as well as trigger out connectors. We also have our audio outputs and our audio inputs, and you see the specifications for those on the right column. After that, we have the USB section. We also have our specifications for that, which are going to be the type and supported operating systems for the software that supports the unit. After that, we have the control section and all of the buttons that are in that section to the right. What follows then is the tempo section. We have the controls to the right that are going to be in that section, along with the buttons, which are tap. After that, we have the edit section. The buttons there are save, copy, erase, and dump. Then we have the following section, which is the mode section, and the buttons that accompany, or should I say that are included in that section. After that, we have the program and playback section and the buttons that are listed in that section as well. The following is the menu section. We have the controls, which is the data control, the buttons to the right, which are in that section, and we also have the display screen in that section too, which is an LED. After that, we have the steps and pads section, and this is where the drum pads are. We have 16 of those. After that, we have the wave designer section, and we have the controls, which is attack and sustain, the buttons, which is ascend, and an LED, which is a signal LED for this section. What follows is the analog filter section. We have the controls, which is cutoff and resonance, and the buttons for this section as well. The following then is the volume section. We have the controls for the volume section and the buttons for the volume section to the right. After that, we have the power requirements, voltage, 12 volt DC, and the current. We also have the physical section, which is the last one, and we have the standard operating temperature, the dimensions of the unit, along with the weight to the right. Now, we'll check out the Behringer LM Drum's top panel controls. We'll start with navigation. When using the various menu pages, navigation is performed using the 4 buttons surrounding the data control itself, and the yes and no buttons. On a single page menu, such as the MIDI menu, the top and bottom buttons or the data control can be used to scroll through the options. And the left and right buttons to move through the available options. The right button switches on any on-off option, while the left button switches it off. Pressing the data control acts as an enter button where necessary. When there are multiple pages that are found in the main menu, then the yes button steps forward into the submenu pages and the no button steps back. Note that the yes button can also be used to switch on an on-off option, but the no button either steps back a page or closes the menu rather than switching it off. Any menu can also be closed by pressing its access button a second time. In most instances, it's not necessary to press enter to save altered options. Next, we have the control section, and the first button in the control section is the MIDI button. You would use this button to invoke the MIDI options menu on the LCD screen. And here you would manage your MIDI 5-pin DIN settings, your send channel, your receive channel, and you could forward MIDI to USB, all kinds of things here. That's what that does. Next is your USB button. You would use this button to access the USB options menu. And here again, you would manage your USB MIDI here, your RX channel, your receive channel, your transmit channel. You can also forward to the MIDI out socket here as well. Those settings are included. After that, we have the sync button. The sync button accesses the sync options menu on the LCD screen. And here you would control the internal clock, and synchronizations for MIDI, USB, triggering. You would control the trigger rate, things like that, using this button. After that, we have the RAND button. The LM drums, they can be set to allow random triggering of sounds on any given setup in a pattern. So pressing the RAM button opens up the RAM menu, and there you can set this up. After that, we have the step repeat. Step repeat is used to loop a number of steps. After that, we have the note repeat button. Note repeat adds as a ratchet effect to any drum while playing. Next, we have the autofill button. The autofill is used to add a fill pattern while the LM drum is in pattern mode and playing. After that, we have the trigger button, and the trigger button will trigger whichever drum sound is selected when the LM drum is stop or pause, or it will activate step or note step repeat when it's playing. Let's move on to the tempo section. The first button we have is the rate, and this is used to set the speed of the LM drum's internal clock from 20 BPM to 240 BPM. After that, we have the tap. Tap this button 3 times to set the tempo of the internal clock. Let's move over to the edit section. The first button is the save button, and that's used to save the current pattern or song. Next is the copy button, and this is used to copy patterns or songs to a different location. After that is the erase button. The erase button allows any pattern, song, or global settings to be deleted from memory. Last but not least is the dump button. The dump button invokes a system-exclusive dump to a piece of software running on a computer connected to the LM drum's MIDI or USB port that is selected using the MIDI or USB buttons when in the dump menu. Let's jump over to the mode section. The first button is the song button, and it's used to enter song mode. And when in song mode, you can select a song for saving, copying, erasing, or dumping. Next is the pattern button. This button is used to enter pattern mode and to select a pattern for saving, copying, erasing, or dumping. After that, we have the step button. This button is used to enter step mode where patterns can be created in step time. Last but not least is the pads button. This is used to enter pads mode where patterns can be created in real time using the voice pads or an external MIDI device such as a synthesizer. Let's move to the program and playback section. The first button is the length button. When you press this button, the length menu is invoked, and it is used to set the length of the currently selected pattern up to a maximum value of 64 steps. And next is the sample button, and it's used to access the user sampling menus. After that, we have the bank button, and this button is used to select a sound sample bank to be used when programming patterns to make up a song. There are 16 banks, which contains 127 sample slots. Next is the Quan button. This button is used to set the quantization for real-time programming. After that is the back button. This button is used to step backward through groups of steps when running a pattern of more than 16 steps in length. Let's move on to the mute button, and this button is used in conjunction with the select buttons to mute and unmute voices during playback and programming. After that, we have the solo button, and it's used in conjunction with the select buttons to solo voices during playback and programming. Next is the forward button. This button is used to step forward through groups of steps when running a pattern of more than 16 steps in length. What follows is the record button, which is used to put the LM drum into record mode. After that, we have the stop button, which is used to stop recording or playback. And then we have the play pause button, and this button is used to start playing back a pattern or song. A second press will pause playback. A third press will resume from the point at which it was paused. Let's move on to the menu section. The default menu is that which shows on the display when none of the submenus accessed by the menu button is in use. It shows the settings of various parameters and alters when they are changed. Some parameters can be selected for editing in the screen, and some can be edited in this or the second screen or a subscreen. When a parameter is changed, the changes are automatically saved. Edits are non-destructive, so making further adjustments is possible. Let's move on to the step pad section. The step pad buttons have multiple functions depending on which other buttons they are used with. When programming in step time, they are used to place a specific drum on the required step. When programming in real time, they are used to play their associated drum sounds. They are used to select a pattern to play, record, copy, erase, or dump. Buttons 1 through 8 are used to select a song to play, record, copy, erase, or dump. Let's move on to the Wave Designer section. The Wave Designer, which is identical to that used on the RD8 and the RD9, is a way by which the transients of selected drums can be altered via the attack and sustain controls. So the first control is the attack control, and it's used to set the attack time for the Wave Designer. Next is the send. Now this button is used to send selected voices to the Wave Designer and filter. After that, we have the sig. Now this LED will light when a signal is present on the Wave's Designer input. After that, we have the sustain, and this control is used to set the Wave Designer's sustain level. Increasing sustain will lengthen the sound's peak, while decreasing it will act as a compressor. Let's check out the analog filter. The analog filter is another piece of functionality that's been ported over from the RD8 and RD9 drum machines and allows the timbre of the LM Drum's sounds to be altered as you would do when creating a sound on an analog synthesizer. Any sound that's been selected by the Wave Designer is then fed to the analog filter, although the filter can be switched out if not required. So the first control is the cutoff, and the cutoff control is used to set the cutoff frequency of the filter. Next is the HPF, and this button is used to change the filter from its normal low pass mode to a high pass mode. After that is the on button, and this button is used to switch the filter on for the selected voice or voices. After that, we have the resonance control, and this control is used to set the resonance level of the filter, which emphasizes the frequencies around the cutoff frequency. Note that unlike on many analog synthesizers, it is not possible to make the LM Drum filter self-oscillate by using high resonance settings. Let's move on to the volume section. The first control is the input control, and this control is used to set the input gain when recording user samples. After that, we have the rec LED, and this LED will be lit when the LM Drum is recording a user sample. After that, we have the master control, and this control is used to set the volume for the master outputs and headphone output. And finally, we're going to check out the tune and mixer sections. And in the tune section, we have the tune controls. These controls are used to tune the snares, toms, and congas, and set the hi-hat decay. Moving on to the mixer section, we have first the pan controls at the top. These controls are used to set the pan positions of the drums and the metronome on the master outputs. When the controls are at the lowest position, the drums will be panned hard right, and at the top position, they'll be panned hard left. Let's move on to the voice select. These buttons are used to select the required voices for programming, muting, soloing, the Wave Designer, and filter. They also light up the following drums when the LM Drum is being programmed or played with the pad buttons on an external MIDI controller. Last but not least is the mixer. These controls are used to set the level of the drums and the metronome on the master outputs. They do not affect the level of individual voice outputs. To remove a drum from the main output, reduce its level to 0. The click metronome fader also sets the monitor level when recording user samples. And finally, we'll discuss the Behringer LM Drum's back panel. Starting with the left, we have the main outputs, and you would use these 1/4" TS unbalanced jacks to access the main outputs of the LM Drum with the level set by the mixer. If a mono output is required, you use only the left output. Now note that sounds panned to the right will appear quieter than their mix settings when the mono output is used. After that, we have the headphone output. This is also a 1/4" TRS stereo jack, and use this, of course, to monitor the output using a pair of headphones. What follows then is the rec input. Now this is also a 1/4" TS unbalanced jack, and you use this to sample sounds into the LM Drum sample memory. Now normally this would be a line level input, but with a higher gain setting, a dynamic microphone can be used. Now keep in mind that phantom power is not available using this functionality. What follows are the voice outs. Now these are 1/8" TS jacks to output individual voices. The level on these sockets is unaffected by the mixer. What follows then is the trigger outs. These are also 1/8" TS jack sockets, and use this to access the analog triggers, which can be assigned to specified voices using the trigger assign menu or via the Synth Tribe app. After that, we have the sync ins. Now these 1/8" TS jacks you would use to synchronize the LM Drum to an external analog sync source. And of course, after that, we have the sync out. Now you would use this 1/4" TS jack to synchronize external analog devices to the LM Drum's internal clock. What follows are the MIDI in, the MIDI out, and the MIDI through. These are 5-pin DIN sockets to control the LM Drum over MIDI. After that, we have the USB. Now this is the USB, or should I say this is a USB Type B socket to control the LM Drum also over MIDI. You can also use it to output the MIDI. You could use it to control the output of the MIDI to external devices and access functions and update firmware using the Synth Tribe app. Keep that in mind. After that, we of course have the power socket. You can connect your power cable there. And last but not least is the power switch. Well, that's a wrap. If you like this presentation, please give it the thumbs up and click the subscribe button on your screen to join our group. We have new presentations coming out every 7 to 14 days, and leave a comment in the comment section about this content. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and TikTok. While you're here, listen to some of the music and check out some of the playlists as well, because they're designed just for you. Thanks for watching. We really do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you soon.